Hey everybody, Mr. Barton here. I'd like to invite you to travel with me back in time to 1941, December. Some of you will already know where we're going. I want to introduce you to an artist and to know about this artist and kind of all of the things that she had to kind of go through to become who she was. You need to know this story. So 1941, December, our country was attacked. In fact, our country was bombed. This was in Hawaii, Pearl Harbor, you've probably heard of it. And the country that attacked us was Japan. We were brought into World War II because of this attack. At that time, 120,000 more or less Japanese American citizens lived and worked in our country. Now, let me remind you, Japanese American citizens. These were people who had made America their home. They were citizens of our country. At that time, there was a lot of fear. We didn't know what the war was going to mean. We didn't know who our enemies were necessarily. And so the people who were in charge made a decision to take all of those Japanese American citizens and put them in a location where we could make sure that they weren't spies. We could, it wasn't the best choice. In fact, some years later, they issued a formal apology to the people that had been interned for 3 years during World War II. And the woman who I want to introduce you to, she was one of those Japanese American citizens. So let me jump over to my slideshow where I can introduce you to Ruth Asawa. This is a story about grit. So think about just for a moment what grit means. You might even pause. This is Ruth Asawa with her artwork. She was an amazing artist. Her work is featured to this day in museums around the world. This is some more of her work. There were mostly sculptures. These are wire sculptures that she knitted. This is one of her teachers. Before we get to this part, let's backtrack just a little bit. So Ruth Asawa was released from where she had been detained with her family, and she decided she wanted to be a teacher. She studied art while she was in the internment camp, and she went to do her student teaching, and she was not allowed to because of her Japanese ancestry. There was still a lot of tension even after the war was over between American citizens and Japanese. We had fought in a war with them. They had tried to kill us. We tried to kill them. And so it was complicated. But Ruth Asawa was not able to do her student teaching. This man that you see teaching the students here, his name is Joseph Albers, and he was a professor at a college right here in North Carolina called the Black Mountain College. So Ruth Asawa heard about this college, which was doing innovative things. They were thinking outside the box, and she moved to North Carolina, and she studied with Joseph Albers. Joseph Albers was an artist himself, and one of the things that he talked about was using common materials to make your art, which is what Ruth Asawa ended up doing. This was the Black Mountain College of the Arts. If you've ever been to the Leaf Festival is on the grounds where the Black Mountain College of the Arts once was. This is where Ruth Asawa continued her education, and this is where she found her path as far as what she wanted to do as an artist. This is Ruth Asawa with her family. She had 6 children. That's right, 6. And education continued to be really important for her. She wanted young people to know how to make art. She even eventually created her own school. This is it. At the time, it was called just the School of the Arts. Now it's called the Ruth Asawa School of the Arts. It's in San Francisco, which is where she ended up settling. It's where her family had been before the internment. Ruth Asawa, if you haven't kind of put it together, is a pretty amazing woman. Not only did she raise her family, but she created works of art that are in museums around the world. She started her own school, and all of this she did even though she was regularly kind of dismissed or pushed aside because she was Japanese. Um, Here she is. It's not the happiest photograph that she's made, but she's with her work. This is all of her work. It was a retrospective at the Museum of Modern Art in New York, which is a huge deal. If your work is in the MoMA, that means that you are a really special artist. Um, One last piece of her work. I'd like you to think about these two questions with your advisory groups today. What does her story teach us about persistence in the face of discrimination? I believe that many of you, if not most of you, will encounter some sort of discrimination, whether it's for your age or perhaps the color of your skin. In your life, you're going to encounter some form of discrimination. And what can you take away from Ruth Asawa's story? And then the second question there, how does Ruth Asawa represent someone with grit? A great conversation hopefully will be had about the word grit. Thanks for listening, and I hope you have some good chats.